that better? Yeah. Thank you. I'm Katie Wagner. I'm the Deputy Field Director here in New Hampshire. And thank you so much for coming. So let me tell you a little bit about why I want to see Bernie Sanders in the White House. I had skin cancer. It was painful. It was expensive. And they cut out a bit of my leg. And I felt like I really had to push myself or I would lose my job. And Senator Sanders, his platforms would protect me, first of all, from the sun, from the ozone with his Green New Deal and climate change proposals. It would, cheer for Green New Deal. Yeah. It would protect me from, Medicare for all would just be, obviously, let's hear for Medicare for all. And his policies would make it easier to unionize. And that's important. So let's hear it for his policies. All right, I'd like everyone here to pull out your phones if you can. I want to see smartphones, wave them in the air. All right, now I've got two things. First, if you can text donate to 67760 so we can all do this together. Pull out your text message box, put in 67760, and you're texting donate. And it would be great if you could make a contribution of $27 today, because remember, we are not funded by the billionaires and corporate interests. We're funded by small donations from people like you. So that's what we need to keep this campaign going. Now, while you have your phones out, if you could also come to your browser, and we're going to put in there a special website just for today, bsanders.us/New Hampshire. And that's going to help you plug into local canvases, phone banks, and barnstorms near you. We have canvases here in Warner on Saturday, June 8th. That's 2 weeks from today, 10 to 2. We would love it if you could sign up and canvass here in your community. It's important. And then we're going to have barnstorms here in Warner as well, right after that. So if you sign up through that website, you can. Then we're going to have volunteers with clipboards. They'll be coming around after ice cream. And then you can sign up with them as well for local canvases here in Warner. That means going door to door, getting the word out about why people need to vote for Bernie Sanders. Then lastly, we've got tent up there with the ice cream. You probably passed on your way down. Make sure you pick up some merch, some New Hampshire for Bernie stuff. And that's here, it's local, and all of those proceeds go directly to the campaign. So thank you so much. And lastly, are you all feeling the burn? Yeah! One more time, you feel the burn? Yeah! Let's have some fun. Thank you.
No, but Bernie's coming. Bernie's coming. Well, Mike, welcome to Warner. I know a lot of you are already here. And welcome to Main Street Bookends and the Jim Mitchell Community Park. But I want to start by, let's have another round of applause for the Dobros. And look at that. They sound pretty good for a bunch of farmers. And they'll be back after Bernie finishes to send him on his way with, starting out with This Land Is Your Land, and they do all the verses. They do all the verses. Well, when my wife Catherine and I and my brother-in-law Jim Mitchell opened up the bookstore 20 years ago, we were starting to lose our Main Street here in Warner. So we knew we had to do something. So we opened up the bookstore, and in the last 21 years, we now have a vibrant and expanding Main Street with businesses, services, museums, soon to be light manufacturing. So it's the kind of strong local economy, the diverse local economy that helps us to maintain our main streets in these small towns. Embedded in this strong local economy, we've got a vibrant network and a growing network of organic farms, that are constantly feeding the local food system. The town has transitioned to 100% solar power. Beginning 8 years ago, we put in solar collectors here in the bookstore that more than meets 100% of what we need. We were the second bookstore in the nation to go 100% solar. The first one was in Tucson, but we don't even count that. Don't have to try very hard, but we're the first bookstore east of the Mississippi. So in the past 3 years, we've been able to convert all of our town buildings and properties over to 100% solar, including our wastewater treatment plant. And we're continuing to expand and increase with individual homeowners, other large businesses, community senior housing. We're working on to transition to 100% solar. So we're well on our way to a more ecological and environmentally sound future. Yes, indeed. Yeah, you bet. You bet. So we also have a wonderful nonprofit foundation, Main Street Warner Inc., that has brought you this free public park and the Main Street Warner stage, all thanks to the community coming together through private donations and volunteerism. We've been able to offer the community in the surrounding area access to free programs and music and concerts, and certainly enables us to host Bernie. So if you're interested in more information about our nonprofit, we have a table set up in the gallery, and please stop by. We're going to kick off our summer season after today, next Saturday, with a big block party with music and everything else going along, food and that sort of thing. So please come back next Saturday. So this is the kind of community that people are proud of. They're proud to live in. And it's a community, I think, that reflects the values, the commitments, as well as the policies of Bernie Sanders. And this will be the 4th time Bernie has been with us. And we invited Bernie back in June 2014, and when we hoped he would run. So we welcome him back again for the 4th time here on the Main Street Warner stage, here to welcome him back for this 2020 run. So that's great. We're going to do it this time. Thank you. We're going to do it. So, let me say that this person doesn't need much of an introduction. But I'd like to bring to the stage Ben Cohen, co-founder of Ben & Jerry's, co-manager of the national campaign. Is that Jerry? Oh, it's Jerry Greenfield. Jerry Greenfield. Oh, I get you guys mixed up all the time. Welcome.
Hello, I'm the Jerry. Here's the Ben. We are incredibly excited to be here. Thank you so much for coming. I got to start with my standard disclaimer. Ben & Jerry's as a company does not support candidates, does not support political parties. However, Ben and Jerry as individuals are all in for Bernie Sanders. Ben and I have never campaigned for a presidential candidate before because we've never found anybody who stands up for the issues so strongly, so incredibly until Bernie came along. And we could not be more honored and more excited to be here. Thank you guys for coming. Hope you enjoy the ice cream. Here's Ben.
Well, clearly, Warner rocks. You know, when we heard we were coming to do this thing at a bookstore and there were going to be 120 people, we said, how the heck do you fit 120 people in a bookstore? And then they said, well, it looks like there's going to be 240 people. And what an amazing place to be. And it's just wonderful to know that Warner is a place, not just a sign on the interstate. And what an amazing place. So, you know, before Bernie, Jerry and I used to be the most famous guys from Vermont. So we are so happy to give the mantle over to Bernie because ice cream is good, but a president of the United States who truly stands for justice in all its flavors, that is euphoric. You know, euphoria is a high-minded word, but the reason why Bernie is going to be able to turn this country around is that he's down to earth. He has a vision, and it's pretty simple. What would our country be like if it was designed to benefit regular, everyday people instead of corporations and the ultra-wealthy? He knows what he's up against. He has no delusions. He has the experience in the trenches, in politics, in Washington, the cesspool of what is our political system today. And with our help, with all of us, it's Bernie who will be able to finally flush the crap down the drain. You know, I don't see Bernie as a politician in the usual sense of the word. He is a fighter for justice, economic, social, racial, and environmental. And he uses politics as a means to that end. Before Bernie, I never had a mayor that represented my values, or a congressman, or a senator. And I can tell you, it feels great, just as great as it's gonna be when we get this guy elected. You know, for the last 40 years, I've been Bernie's constituent. He has been steadfast and determined. For these last 4 decades, he has worked to improve the lives of regular, everyday people and those who are oppressed. You know, in 1980, when Ben & Jerry's was just starting out, Bernie won an improbable victory over a long-term party machine, old crony politician, and became my mayor. His first act was to shut down plans for expensive condominiums that would have privatized Lake Champlain, and instead he turned the land into a park that was open to everybody. When he became my congressman, he personally took busloads of senior citizens over the border into Canada so that they could buy their prescription drugs at decent prices. He co-founded the Progressive Caucus in the House, which has now become the largest values-based caucus. He voted against NAFTA before being against NAFTA was cool. He voted against going to war in Iraq twice. Then, in 2007, he defeated the richest man in Vermont to become my senator. As a senator, he worked with conservatives to force the first ever audit of the Federal Reserve Bank, which revealed $16 trillion in near zero interest loans to big banks after the 2008 recession. Then he led a successful effort to stop the so-called chain CPI, which would have cut benefits to Social Security recipients and veterans.
Thank you, Bernie.
And last September, Bernie introduced the Stop Bezos Act. That stands for Stop Bad Employees by Zeroing Out Subsidies. A month after he introduced it, Jeff Bezos, head of Amazon, raised their minimum wage to $15 an hour. You know, when Bernie ran for president the first time, and he said he wouldn't take any big money, I thought it was a mistake. I thought that he'd never raise the money that he needed to mount a credible campaign. And then I came to understand it. He understood that if there weren't enough people, if there weren't millions of people who were willing to support him with small donations, then he didn't want to become president, because he understood that he would never be able to get what he wanted accomplished once he got into office, because, as he has said so often, it's not about him, it's about us. So, what do I think about Bernie the man? Well, he's always been the same. He never wavers. He has a clear vision for how to make America kind again. He's not a fancy guy. He's pretty down to home, no airs, and I like his hairstyle. That never wavers either. He doesn't go with the trends, he sets the trends. Small donor-funded campaigns, universal health care, publicly funded colleges and universities. Bernie, the trendsetter? Who knew? He's already leading the nation. Just look at all the other candidates that are following him. Take it away. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Juana. Thank you. Thank you. Let me thank the Doe Bros. Let me thank Neil and Catherine Nevins. And let me thank Kathy Wagner. And let me thank these guys who I've known for about 100 years. And what I want to say about Ben & Jerry is not just that they make a great ice cream, and they do, but they have, in their own way, started a political revolution in getting the word out to companies and employers all over this country that you can make a profit without being greedy and selfish and disrespectful of the environment. So out of their work came a movement where you're seeing companies all over this country accepting their responsibilities as corporate citizens, treating their workers with respect. In the case in Vermont, these guys played a very good role in helping struggling dairy farmers throughout the state. And that is the work that they've done, and it is very, very significant. Guys, thank you very much. Everybody knows that today is Memorial Day, so I'm not going to give a usual political speech, and I do want to begin by having all of us remember the over 1 million men and women who lost their lives in America's wars. And today is a day that we honor them, we remember them, and we know the pain and suffering that so many families have experienced when they lost a husband or a son. And that's, today we don't want to forget about that. Now, what our campaign is about, two fundamental things, and I think you all know it. And the first is to take a hard look at our country and ask, where are we today? And that's something Congress doesn't do very much, something media doesn't do very much, but we have got to do it. Take a hard look. Where are we as a nation? And then secondly, where do we want to go? Where do we want to go? And when we talk about where we want to go, we don't have to think small. We can think big. And when we think big, it turns out that there are a heck of a lot of people throughout this country who end up agreeing with us. And let me begin here today in Warner by thanking the people of New Hampshire. Because in 2016, you sent a profound message all across this country. And you said that the ideas that we believe in are not radical ideas, they're not extreme ideas. These are ideas we need to adopt in the United States, and by giving us a big victory in 2016, you made the whole country wake up about the ideas that we have. So thank you, Warner, thank you to him. And I just want to talk about how change comes about. 4 years ago, when I was here, and I said that in America, if somebody works 40 hours a week, that person should not be forced to live in poverty. That we should raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. Well, at that point, that idea was perceived to be a very radical idea because the federal minimum wage today is all of $7.25 an hour. But do you know what's happened over the last 4 years? 7 states in this country have raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And in many ways, that effort began here in New Hampshire. 4 years ago, we said something that the establishment, political establishment, media establishment said, and still says, is an extreme idea, something that will never happen in America. The idea that health care for all is a human right, not a privilege. Well, what's happened over the last 4 years is that poll after poll now suggests that a majority of the American people want to move toward a Medicare for all single-payer program. Four years ago, we talked about the greed of the pharmaceutical industry. And we talked about the absurdity of Americans having to go to Canada or buy medicine online from other countries because we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. And today, the overwhelming majority of the American people are demanding that we stop the greed of the pharmaceutical industry, and when we are in the White House, we're going to cut prescription drug costs in this country by half. And that is not a radical idea either, because if we cut prescription drug costs by half, we'll simply be paying the same prices that countries all over the world are paying. Last year, the top 10 drug companies made $69 billion in profit, and yet 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford to buy the medicine their doctors prescribe. How absurd is that? And 4 years ago, we talked about the existential threat to our country and the world of climate change. And people did not quite agree. Well, today they do agree, because they understand that the scientists have told us that we have all of 12 years, not a very long time, to cut fossil fuel emissions substantially and to move this country aggressively to energy efficiency and sustainable energy like those solar panels right there. And when we talk about climate change, let us be clear what we're talking about. We're not just talking about the future of our country, we are talking about the future of the entire planet. We are talking about the moral imperative to make certain that we leave this planet to our children and our grandchildren in a way that is healthy and is habitable. Now today, we have a president who is working in partnership with the fossil fuel industry, which is lying every single day. Some of you may remember that 50 or so years ago, the tobacco industry, when asked whether their product caused cancer and heart disease and other illnesses, they went before Congress and the executives raised their right hand. They said, oh no, we have no evidence that smoking cigarettes causes cancer or other illnesses. They lied. And right now, we have got to recognize that the fossil fuel industry every single day is lying, is denying their responsibility in destroying this planet while they make billions in profit. So today, we say to the fossil fuel industry that your short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet, that whether you like it or not, we are going to transform our nation's energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. Let me also tell you this, and this is thinking big, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. But I think in this moment in world history, we're looking at countries all over the world spending well over $1 trillion on weapons of destruction, weapons to kill each other. If elected president, one of my top priorities would be to reach out to countries all over the world and to say, stop spending billions to kill each other. Let us unite against the common enemy of climate change. And by the way, when we do that, we create in our own country millions and millions of good-paying jobs. 4 years ago, when I was here in New Hampshire campaigning, we talked about a broken criminal justice system. And we understood that in our great nation, there is something profoundly wrong when we have more people in jail today than any other country on earth. Far more than in China, a nation 4 times our size. And the reason for that is manifold, many reasons why. But let me just say this in terms of addressing a broken and racist criminal justice system. Right now, as a nation, we are spending $80 billion a year at the local, state, and federal level to lock up fellow Americans. I have a better idea, and that is, instead of spending $80 billion a year imprisoning people in this country, why don't we start spending billions of dollars on our young people in jobs and education rather than jails and incarceration? And when we talk about criminal justice reform, We are talking about ending private prisons and private detention centers in this country. We are talking about ending cash bail. Do you know what I mean by that? People know what I mean by that? Many people do not know that in America today, right now, as we speak, there are some 400,000 people in jail. Do you know why they're in jail? They are in jail because they are poor and cannot afford the $500 or $1,000 they need in bail to get out of jail. Can you imagine that? In the year 2019, what we have is the equivalent of debtor's prison. People rotting in jail because they don't have the money to get bail. We're going to end that absurd system. And I'm happy to tell you that we're making progress there in California, Pennsylvania, and elsewhere. And when we talk about criminal justice reform, we have to understand why so many people are in jail. And that leads us to the need to end the so-called war on drugs, which has destroyed countless lives in America. Countless lives. And where we have made some good progress over the last 4 years is when I was here 4 years ago, and I said, you know what? Maybe we should legalize or at least decriminalize the possession of marijuana. 4 years ago, a crazy idea, not so crazy today. All over the country, we're seeing progress in that area. And when we look at some of the issues in this country, we cannot forget that right now, we're looking at some 10 million people who are undocumented, and that we have a president who, in a racist and ugly way, is trying to demonize these people. And what we intend to do in the White House is move this country aggressively to comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. Let me say a word about some issues that are developing right now. I was in Alabama maybe 10 days ago. And as you know, the Alabama state legislature and governor have passed draconian legislation essentially making abortion illegal. And their goal, and the goal of the state of Georgia and other states, is essentially to overturn Roe versus Wade. Well, let me be as clear as I can be, and that is that I believe that in the United States of America, it is the women of this country who have the right to control their own bodies, not politicians. That is why we will vigorously defend Roe versus Wade. And I want to say a word on that, about the hypocrisy of some of my right-wing colleagues. Now, I'm in the Senate, and every day on the floor of the Senate, there's some guy getting up there and saying, some right-wing guy saying, you know, we hate big government. Big government is terrible. Get the government out of the lives of the people. Let people live their lives without government intrusion. Deregulate everything. You heard that once or twice? Well, they believe that except when it comes to the right of a woman to make a personal choice with regard to her life. So I say to those right-wing politicians, if you don't believe that government should be involved in people's personal lives, get out of the lives of women's bodies. I want to say a word about the political situation in America, broadly speaking. And that is I think the American people understand. We have today a corrupt political system. What that system, what democracy is supposed to be about, not complicated. Democracy is supposed to be about one person, one vote. You gotta vote, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. But as a result of that disastrous Supreme Court Citizens United decision, we have a situation where billionaires in this country can buy elections. And together, when we enter the White House, at the very top of our priority list will be the effort to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. And by the way, when we talk about democracy, what we are seeing all over this country in an incredibly ugly and anti-American way are efforts on the part of Republican governors and legislatures to suppress the vote, to make it harder for people of color, for poor people, and for young people to participate in the political process. Now, I want to be the leader of a country which proudly proclaims to the world that we believe in democracy, not authoritarianism. That we are going to make it easier, not harder, for people to vote, whether it is in Tennessee, whether it's in Alabama, or whether it is right here in the state of New Hampshire. So we have made some progress on many issues, and the one more issue that I want to touch on and I want to call to all of your attention. As a member of the U.S. House representing Vermont and a member of the U.S. Senate, I have cast many, many votes. But I think perhaps the most important vote that I have ever cast was against the war in Iraq. And as I listened back then, 2003, to what Dick Cheney was saying, what John Bolton, you've heard of John Bolton. He's still around, you know, unfortunately. And what President Bush was saying, I didn't believe it. I did not believe it. And I did my best. We really worked hard to try to defeat that initiative, which led to the United States invasion of Iraq, which led to massive destabilization in that area, which led to over 4,000 deaths of U.S. service people and the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people in that region. And right now, if you can believe it, Trump and people in his administration apparently have learned nothing from that horrific war in Iraq. And you have people like John Bolton and others talking about the need to go to war in Iran. And let me be very clear. If you think the war in Iraq was a disaster, my strong belief is that a war with Iran would be much worse. And what it would mean, and I believe this seriously, what it would mean is an Orwellian scenario where we are in perpetual warfare, endless wars, generation after generation, massive military budgets fighting wars. And whether my opponents or anybody else likes it or not, I intend to do everything that I can. And by the way, we're working with some honest conservatives on this issue. Because not only would a war with Iran be a disaster, it happens to be unconstitutional. Now, Trump doesn't understand it, I don't think he's terribly familiar with or comfortable with the Constitution of the United States. But what the Constitution says, it is the Congress that has the ability to declare war, not a president of the United States. So on this issue, I think you're going to see a coming together of progressives and conservatives to do everything that we can to stop what would be a horrific and unconstitutional war. So let me just say that over the last 4 years, we have made a great deal of progress, I believe, in moving our country and the Democratic Party in a much more progressive direction. Obviously, we have a long way to go, but we have made progress. But the other part of what we call the political revolution is not just fighting for progressive ideas and a progressive agenda. It is mobilizing the American people in an unprecedented way. Now, I could stand before you for hours, and you could do the same, and lay out all kinds of great ideas as to where this country should go. But those ideas don't mean anything unless millions of people stand up, get involved in the political process, and have the courage to take on the very powerful special interests who are trying to preserve the status quo. So what this campaign is about is not only fighting for a progressive agenda, it is mobilizing people all across this country. Donald Trump is trying to divide us up based on the color of our skin or where we were born, or our gender, or our sexual orientation, or our religion. That's what he wants to do. He thinks he can win an election dividing us up. Well, our views are exactly the opposite. We're going to bring our people together around an agenda that works for all and not just the 1%. Now, I don't have to tell you in the American political process how important New Hampshire is. Iowa is going to have the first caucus, and that's enormously important, and we're working hard in Iowa. And New Hampshire is going to have the first primary. I believe we stand a very good chance of winning in Iowa, and with your help, we could win here in New Hampshire. And if we win here in New Hampshire, I think the path is very good. We're doing much better in South Carolina, and we're going to do well in Nevada as well. And we're strong in California. So if we can win those states, I think we have a very strong path to victory. And every poll that I have seen, or virtually every poll, has us defeating Donald Trump, and in many of the battleground states, beating him by pretty big numbers. So today I am asking for your help in several ways. I'm asking for your help here in this pivotally important state of New Hampshire. Help us win the Democratic primary here. And then after we win the primary here, help us defeat Trump in the general election. But I am asking even more from you than that. That's a lot to ask, but I'm kind of greedy here. I'm going to ask for something else. And that is, when we make it to the White House, I will not be able to do it alone. Because what our campaign is about is not just winning an election, it is about transforming this country. And that means we have to take on Wall Street and break up these large financial institutions. We have to take on the powerful pharmaceutical industry and cut prescription drug prices in half. We have to take on the insurance industry and move toward Medicare for all. We have to take on the fossil fuel industry and aggressively combat climate change. We have to take on the military-industrial complex. We have to take on the prison-industrial complex. That's a lot of people to be taken on. A lot of power out there. But what this entire campaign is about, it's not just winning an election. I think one of the things that discourages the American people is the candidates say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do the other thing, and they win, and nothing happens. All right, so our job is to win the primary, it's to win the general election. But we are in this to transform this country and create a government and an economy that works for all of us, not just the 1%. So we're going to need your help now, and we're going to need your help after the inauguration. Are you ready to stand up and fight? Okay. Now, a number of you, as I was walking around, wanted selfies. So if people want to form a line, and I'm happy to do selfies with as many people who want them. Thank you all for being here today.
Somebody else's way. Hello. Did he really? Well, let's go to camera mic. You can do something else. Yeah, I just go to camera mic. Yeah, I mean, I think you can try to go to no, we're good.
Come on.